What's good, everybody? How's everybody doing? Hello, 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 and all that good stuff. As you can see, I'm kind of excited. It's going to be an exciting episode. This is Take Time Out with Tre Mosley, and I am your host, Tre Mosley. I got to get my energy up because my guest keeps her energy up, and if I get too low, it it might I don't know what's going to happen. So I gotta get myself pumped up, got to get hyped up, got to get juiced up because I have a young lady who I over the past it's been over a decade now. That's
Oh,
crazy. I first met Joan Baker and her husband Rudy. Believe it or not, kids, at the very first VO Atlanta eons ago, and it was like 50 people. And that same year, I went to a conference called That's Voiceover. And I have seen the work that has been put in to now they have an organization called Sovas and the great work that they're doing over there. But before we get into that, let's run a quick clip of the lovely and talented Joan Baker. Hit it, Ryan.
Introducing one woman who struts her stuff like a hot knife through butter. The legendary Joan Baker.
Wicked, the musical mega hit.
The untold story of the witches of Oz.
Tickets on sale now, so don't miss your chance to get Wicked.
Do you have different voices for different things that you do?
I do. Well, I spend a lot of my days talking like that.
Victoria's Secret introduces the Lacy. The sexiest, softest, laciest lingerie collection ever.
To another red carpet night at the Tribeca Film Festival, where legendary and upcoming filmmakers from around the world are bringing New York to life with the magic of motion pictures.
I witnessed a lot of bigotry, and a lot of it was directed towards me. My father's white, my mom black. My first grade teacher, she would put a dunce cap on me and put me in the corner of the classroom, and then she would point to me and say, "Kids, this is someone you don't want to be like." And I just could not understand that. And I remember I would always stare at her, and I would look at her, and I would think to myself in my head, if you only knew me, you would like me.
Growing up, I knew that I wanted to be an actress and dancer, but I didn't quite know how I was going to be humanitarian. But that was definitely a focus for me. And how that manifested through me was that my father had passed away from complications of Alzheimer's disease. The proceeds from my book go to the Alzheimer's Association.
That voiceover has been an evolution, an ongoing event where we really talk about our trade secrets and how we do it. In my journey of voiceover, I really learned along the way the craft and the tricks and the trade and how to really open my inner life and really bring it to a microphone. And the biggest lesson I've learned is to be unstoppable.
And speaking of unstoppable, ladies and gentlemen, Joan Baker is on the show, y'all.
Da, 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 da.
I told
Hi.
you I gotta match the energy. I gotta match the energy. How are you, my dear?
Oh my gosh, I am good. I am juggling. I am every day I recommit to being unstoppable. So that's what's happening. But a lot of work is ahead of me for this year. And so that's what I'm planning on right now, on how to execute it, who to pursue, the groundwork.
Absolutely. I want to touch on a few things, and I'm glad that that clip, shout out to that producer extraordinary Ryan for putting it together.
Yes, thank
Um,
you, Ryan.
Outside of voiceover, I
Mhm.
don't think a lot of people know. And it's funny because as we're doing this interview, I remember a post you put up maybe a day or so ago. You came to New York to be a dancer,
Oh, yes.
and not
I
just
still
any
dance,
dancer,
Ray.
y'all.
I still actually dance.
But not
But
many folks I know can say they dance with Alvin Ailey.
Well, actually, I was on scholarship there, and what scholarship consisted of was 5 classes a day, 5 days a week. Actually, this was in the 80s. So that scholarship was worth $3,500 a month.
Wow.
And that was a lot for back then, right?
Oh, yeah.
No, it was an extraordinary learning experience, but at the same time, I don't know if you know much about the dance world, but especially back then, as opposed to now, things might have changed. But it used to be kind of a negative, it could be a negative experience because dance is such an incredibly, physically pounding kind of craft. So teachers tended to be not only did you have to be very disciplined, but they tended to be really tough on you. No one no one was taking you down the garden path about making it or not making it and what it took to make it. And it was grueling. As a matter of fact, when I would leave class every day, and I was on scholarship there for two years, you couldn't miss a class. If you did, you were out. It was as simple as that. If you got an injury, which I did get an injury. It was in my hamstring, but I could only take a week off. And what I ended up doing was sitting on frozen meat for a week
Times
because
it
at the
down.
time I didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I could have afforded it, even if I did, but I didn't know where to go and I didn't have the time based on this scholarship to look. So would sit on frozen meat until my hamstring felt better. But I always had to watch class. Everything was under this very intense dome, as dance is, but in
Mhm.
particular at Alvin Ailey, it was no damn joke. But one of my dreams was to be an Alvin Ailey dancer. Now, what I found out, which is the politics behind it at that time, was if you had a scholarship, which I did, then most likely you were not going to get into the company.
Wow.
That what they did is that they would have auditions for outside dancers that had nothing necessarily to do with Alvin Ailey. And those were the people that would get into the company if they were looking for new people. I mean, they tend to have the same people for a very long time. But so if there was an opening, they'd have an audition outside of the school. They
Mhm.
didn't tend to take scholarship students. But I did end up performing with the third, because they had 3 companies. And I
Mhm.
did end up performing with the third company. But my dream was the first company. So after 2 years on scholarship, they actually sent a letter to everyone's parents saying, if you can afford to do this without the scholarship, please do. And so I talked to my dad, who was willing to do it, but I wasn't, because it wasn't worth it to me to go through all that grueling. I could barely walk up staircases.
Wow.
I would actually hear people say, "Lady, can you move it?" Because I literally walked like,
Yeah.
at 21.
Sheesh.
So, and the dues that you pay are fine, but I felt like the dues were so incredibly intense as opposed to what the benefit would be had I even been able to audition to get into the company. So I didn't
Mhm.
even have that. So it
Man.
really hit me. And I said, I'm moving on. I did go to other institutions that were absolutely as incredible and as intense. One of them was called American Dance Machine. And what they did was they focused on show stopping Broadway numbers. So I went from Alvin Ailey, which was what you would call concert dance, meaning
Mhm.
that it's a combination of heavy duty ballet, heavy duty modern, but also other types of dance mixed. And
Sure.
I studied all kinds of dance. So I would have been perfect for Alvin Ailey, although I ended up being perfect for being on scholarship. And then, so I went from Ailey to American Dance Machine. And again, I met, you know, literally the show stopping Broadway dancers as well as choreographers. So that was also an extraordinary experience. I ended up being chosen after auditioning. I ended up being chosen for a documentary. I don't remember now the name of the documentary,
Mhm.
but Japanese Nippon Productions, which is a huge production company in Japan, they created this documentary for American Dance Machine, but it had people like the late Cheetah Rivera in it, Donna McKechnie in it. So it
Wow.
showed the Broadway people, but it ended up focusing on me, and going through a series of auditions, because the documentary focused on this a Broadway-bound musical called Jack, and it was based on a choreographer like the grandfather of jazz, Jack Cole. He choreographed
Okay. Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe, in a lot of her movies. And also, Jack Cole choreographed all kinds of things for Hollywood. So I had studied it when I was in 8th grade. I had studied his style. So I ended up, auditioning for this. But once I auditioned for the documentary, for some reason they zoned in on me as the main person. So it was kind of like a week in a life of a dancer going through a series of auditions that not
Mhm.
only preliminary was in Japan, but it was also Broadway bound. So what happened was, it was between me and the girl that got it. Story of my life.
Oh.
Me and the girl that got it. And we were very different. She
Mhm.
was more balletic. I was definitely more jazz and modern and, kind of ethnic based.
Sure.
Anyway, she got it. They went to Japan. Wayne Salento, who was in the original Chorus Line and many other musicals, very huge in the Broadway world, he played Jack. So they all went to Japan. So what happened in Japan was the documentary was shown. This was before they ended up doing the musical as a preview. So the
Mhm.
documentary was shown. Well, I got a call from the director, Lee Theodore, and she told me that there were hundreds to thousands of Japanese people
They
that
wanted
loved.
to see you.
Yes, and they didn't
Oh,
understand
man.
why I wasn't in the musical and why they chose the girl they did. And they
Wow.
were all in the lobby of American Dance Machine where they were staying in the hotel,
Yeah.
and literally attacked Lee Theodore and the woman, not attacked like violently, but
Yeah.
literally was in their faces as to why they didn't choose me. I mean, I heard that people made t-shirts with my face crying, because there were
Oh,
many
man.
times in this journey of auditioning that I was crying, and the cameras caught me in particular when I was told I wasn't going to get it, and the girl that did. They followed me everywhere. They even had my ATM number, Trey. So
Oh,
I mean,
oh,
they
boy.
followed me everywhere. And
That
again, not but no, I didn't know I wasn't going to get it. I
yeah.
didn't even know I was going to get it was going to be between me and the woman. It just so happened that's how it unfolded. So it was a really incredible documentary on dance, and it won 3 Emmys, the equivalent of Emmys in Japan. So it
What?
was a big deal. And for years after that, I'd be at other dance studios, and Japanese would come in because they would study here in New York at
Mhm.
different dance schools. And when that would happen, I'd have to sign autographs. People wanted to take me out to dinner. They wanted to hear what I really felt and went through, not getting the job. And it would have
Mhm.
been a featured dance position in the musical. And
That's
by the
insane.
way, it bombed in Japan, so it never made it to Broadway. And this was with an audience that loved American Dance Machine, loved them. They even had a school out there. American Dance Machine even had a school. The woman that runned it, she played the original Anybody's on Broadway in West Side Story.
Hmm.
So she already had a name and an audience. So it bombed.
Wow.
Yeah. So that, that era in dance was incredibly breathtaking to me. Some parts of it were shocking to me, and other parts I couldn't believe that I was surrounded by so many extraordinary dancers, and going for my dream. But out of that dance, there are many things happened through dance before I even got to voice acting. So I did music videos with rapper stars where I was featured. I did um, an act, Josephine Baker act. I had met Jean-Claude Baker because I went there to research Josephine Baker because I had gotten a feature in
Mhm.
Interview magazine, and that was Andy Warhol's magazine. He
Yeah.
created it, and actually, when I was told they were going to do a feature on me, because I had created this project, and I knew everything about Andy Warhol, just so happened. So I created this project that surrounded the people that he knew, but I did spoofs on all the people he knew. And I
Oh, okay.
created dialogue with them. It was this whole project. So I had sent it to them, not thinking anything really, but enjoying that I did this. And, I wanted something perhaps to come out of it, but I wasn't keen on what exactly. So I
Mhm.
sent them this project. They literally called me the weekend that Andy Warhol died.
Oh, wow.
I know. And they said that he had seen it, that he had wanted them to reach out, but because he died, they were,
Yeah.
dealing with that, but that they offered me a job at Interview Magazine or to be featured. And I said, ha 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 ha, I'll take the feature.
Mm.
So I ended up being featured in Interview Magazine. So one of the people I was imitating was Josephine Baker. I didn't really know that much about her at the time, but I had a costume designer, and she took me to Chez Josephine, which had just opened its doors in Midtown. I went there. As soon as I walked in the door, there was Jean-Claude Baker, again, one of Josephine Baker's the last adopted child from Josephine Baker. And he
Mhm.
was like, "You are Josephine." And from that moment on, we became incredible friends. I did the Interview Magazine. He actually offered it. You could do some pictures here. But I was
Hmm.
doing pictures of Josephine Baker. I don't know if you know who Edie Sedgwick was. And I also did old Coco Chanel.
Oh, okay.
And there was no like photography where it was, being transformed. I transformed myself. I studied these people. I, did a trial run in my apartment where I put on, their outfits, their personality, their poses. So I really practiced. So did this whole photo shoot. And so that's actually how I met Jean-Claude. And he was so impressed with the Interview Magazine that he asked me, would I be interested in doing a Josephine Baker act at the restaurant? Let me tell you something.
No.
This man is so picky. I mean, so picky that it was shocking that he would even ask me to do it because he was so picky and in particular very possessive around his mom and her
Mm.
image. So he would introduce me to in the restaurant, I'd go to the restaurant and he would introduce me to like her dresser at the Folies Bergère. I would
Wow.
sit down and have an interview with her. He would introduce me to her managers that were still alive. So they were very, very old, but they were very clear on their memories about Josephine Baker. So I learned a lot from her, as well as going to stock shop libraries and watching documentaries on her. I went to the picture library that had thousands and thousands of pictures of her, but it wasn't like Google. It's not like I could Google the
Yeah.
information.
You had to
So
really
I
put
had
in the
to,
groundwork and
yes,
pound the
Trey.
pavement.
Yes, I had to memorize things that she would do. It just so happened that we were kind of a lot alike. So it was a joy to do, but I had to memorize these things because there was no, helpful internet at the time.
Sure.
But it was a true adventure. And I channeled her there for 4 years. And what occurred to me was that one day it just kind of hit me that I said, I really wanted to make money in show business. And it's not like I wasn't truly given things that were almost like incredible barters for what I was doing. Because I also performed in other nightclubs. I also did other people, like imitated other people
Mhm.
in nightclubs as well, not just Josephine, but other people. But I really wanted to make money. And because I needed to make a living, I was really, my dad was helping me. I did have a job that kind of paid the bills, but my dad's help really made a difference, of course.
Sure.
But I had to let that go. So that's when I got a different kind of serious and I moved on to voiceover, and that happened by accident. I didn't even know it could be a career, nothing. I knew nothing about voiceover. But I did
Same
know
here.
acting.
Let's go back before we get into the wonderful world that we know as VO. I hear the passion that you bring when you talk about dance and being one who likes to entertain. Let's go way back to a very young Joan. When did the bug hit you that you wanted to be in the spotlight and be an entertainer and dancer?
since I can remember. When I was, 4, I was already like I had a mirror in my bedroom. I would choreograph, I would get costumes together, and I would perform for myself
Mm.
every week with the stuff that I choreographed. And this is before I studied dance or anything like that. I didn't know that that's what happened necessarily, you know, but I took on my dream very, very early. Also, when I was 10, I always talked to everyone about being an actress. I mean, everybody that would listen. And so one of my neighbors had said to my mom that her daughter was doing what was called the Marin Shakespeare Festival. It was the most famous Shakespeare festival in the world. It would gather all kinds of actors from all over the world to play Shakespearean parts. It was something they did every summer, and it was a big deal. And it was done in Marin County, in the redwoods of Marin County of San Rafael, and this extraordinarily beautiful stage that was
Wow.
built outside. So my neighbor told my mom that there was an opening for Wind in the Willows because they were kids in that.
Mhm.
And so she asked if I wanted to audition for it, and I did. So I auditioned for it, and I got to play a stoat, which is like an animal. I'm not sure where it's from now, maybe Australia or European, but I got to play a stoat. Then after that, I was hooked. Now that was 10. 11, I auditioned for The Wizard of Oz, and I not only played a munchkin, but I also understudied for the witch, who
Wow.
was a grown adult major actor. I
Hmm.
was her understudy because I would imitate things. Something I loved people, but I also loved to kind of like step into their skin.
Yeah.
So I got to be her understudy. Now I never did go on, but I definitely got to be her understudy. So that really, I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I overheard someone talk about they had an agent. This was in San Francisco, although I'm in Marin County, which is right across the Golden
That's
Gate.
right across the yeah.
Yeah. So I overheard someone talk about them having an agent, and I was like, that's what I want. So I started making phone calls. See, I'm still doing this to this day. I started making phone calls from the yellow pages. I was calling different television networks. And finally, someone said at a network, they said, "Oh, what you're looking for is a talent agency." And then they said, "You want to call the Brebner Agency. They're the top agency in San Francisco for actors." I called them. I'm telling you, I was 10. I made an appointment. I made an appointment for my girlfriend and me, although her dream wasn't necessarily to be an actress, but she wanted to hang out. So we both went to Brebner Agency. We auditioned for the agent separately. And I got told after my audition that I was in, but she didn't get in. But
Oh.
it wasn't devastating for her because it wasn't like she wanted necessarily
Yeah.
to be in show business, although she would have been a great looker. She was definitely someone that looked older than her age. So I got in
Gotcha.
right away. I got a movie right away. And then I got a television show, which was also basically right away. So I was on a television series called Whatchamacallit, which was a very popular kids show in California.
Okay.
Very popular. It was the equivalent of, I don't know if you remember a show called Zoom. We're going to
I used to
Zoom. Zoom.
love Zoom.
Yeah, it was the
Man.
equivalent of that.
Yeah.
And so I was on that show as a regular I took the place of an original.
Mhm.
And the original was a woman. There was three boys and one girl, and I took her place because she left.
Okay.
So they did a all-out search. There's something about being a kid that's so magical because you don't know the rules. You don't even know their rules. You're
Yeah.
coming from your heart, and it was one of those things where I walked into the casting office. There must have been, I kid you not, 200 kids, wall to wall kids. I
Jeez.
had an appointment and I got there at my appointment time. So I went right into the room.
Mhm.
There was the producer. Her name was Mary. And Mary said to me, "Joan," she goes, "tell me about your day." I
Hmm.
don't know what I said, But I look up from talking and she is pounding the table with tears coming out of her eyes. She was laughing so hard. I don't know what I
Oh.
said. I can't remember. And then she said, wait right there. She goes, I'm going to go get the producer. I mean, the director. The director comes back and she goes, Joan, can you tell us what you told me exactly? So I go back and I tell the story and I look up and they're both pounding the desk with tears. Tre, it's never happened in a way that again. It's not happened that way before or after. So
That's the magic of it.
yeah. And so I was immediately put on the show. And we, at the time, we used to write our own scripts. So for the first year I was on the show, we wrote our own scripts. But when I was there, they would ask the kids, so what are your opinion or what do you think about this particular skit or whatever it may be? And I would shoot up my hand right away with ideas. So then that's why I got on the show earlier. I was really meant to watch the show, watch them in action, for about a month, but right away, but not knowing, oh, I shouldn't raise my hand or whatever it was. So I got on the show right away. It was life changing, for me, because my goal was to be an actress since I can remember. And that was by the time I was 11 and 12 and 13, the show was actually in competition with Monday Night Football.
Whoa.
So after a couple years, they decided to cancel the show and just stick to Monday Night Football.
Huh.
And so the television network we were on, which was Channel 5, asked me if I would continue on with Channel 5 and be a kid news reporter for the news. Can you believe I said, no, I want to study? And I was studying for years after that, decades. But that whole experience for me really kind of saved my childhood because, growing up in the civil rights era and in Marin County, which was considered a utopian place to live.
Yeah.
It was
It
not
still
easy.
is in some cases.
Yeah, exactly. But it really was not easy. And as a kid, I found myself either in a magical scenario of my creating or devastated. So it would constantly bounce back because, not only were kids calling me names, and these were kids that didn't know me. So not only were they calling me names, but they're adults. They're parents.
Do you think that because of being a biracial kid and the stuff that was going on around you and how it affected you, that you saw being an entertainer as an outlet? Like, look, and like you said in the clip we showed, I don't know why you guys hate me. If you really get a chance to know me, you like me.
Yeah.
So, when I saw that, that made me think, I'm like, I wonder how that made you feel growing up where you have people who are just mean and they don't even know who you are.
Right.
Talk about how, being able to act and to make people laugh and to entertain kind of deflected what was going on in the real world around you.
Well, it actually really did. When I was actually in the midst of performing and the response that I would get from audience or even, the adults around, because a lot of times what I did was either at school or outside of school, because I did a lot of activities outside of school. I was also feeding my dream.
Yeah.
But as it turned out, it kept my dream alive and going because I got the most positive attention when I performed versus when I was walking down the street. Right. So that gave me hope. That was something that inspired me and made me think that my dream was right.
Yeah.
Like I connected to the right thing in terms of my dream. So it took me a long time, though, to overcome intense adversity when I was growing up. And there isn't one kid that knew me that wouldn't agree that if they were in my shoes, they don't know how they would have grown up.
Yeah.
Because it was coming at me on a regular basis. Again, I felt like the magical moments were when I was performing or dealing with people that were also in performance.
Sure.
So that saved my childhood, to be honest with you, because I felt like if I didn't have that goal or that dream, and I was just going along as a kid, not necessarily knowing what I wanted to do in life,
Yeah.
I always said I would have either been in jail or perhaps a drug addict on some level. There's no question about it.
Because you would have
And
had an outlet to
no, I would
do.
not have had an outlet, and I still would have craved some kind of love
Yeah.
from other people. So I would have tried to soothe myself by drugs or doing something illegal that would have put me in jail. There is
Yeah.
no question about it.
No,
And
I understand that. I have I talk to people often about, one thing that I love doing about this podcast is I encourage my guests to talk about the before. We know the accolades, we know the after,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
I think it's good for folks to know the before to realize that not everybody woke up one day and was like, "Hey, I'm going to be a voice actor, and look, I made it. Look at me." That there are steps
Oh my
that are
God.
happening to the ascension. When you see the mountain from the distance, you don't go, "Oh, that's not a bad walk. I can make
That's
it."
not a
But once
bad
you
climb, right?
but once you start that journey and you're like, I'm still not there yet. And I've been walking for 10 years. Oh,
Yes.
I'm still not there yet. In 15 years, I still haven't reached the peak. And, it's
Right.
grueling. And so many things that happen on that journey start to define who we are, and it shapes who we are.
It
Um,
does.
talk about, for me, one thing I will always tell people that has helped my career is not the training I got, it's not the coaches I got, it's not the agents, it's the support. Talk about
Yes.
how important having people around you that support you can also help propel your career.
I think that's the difference, including spouses. Like one thing I've noticed about voiceover is the most successful people, whether they're married or, they're in a committed relationship, they tend to have incredible spouses behind them. I so far have not seen it not that way.
Yeah.
So relationships are critical, especially the ones that are closest to you. They kind of give you permission to do things that you might not have thought you needed to do because you would have put it a limitation. It's the
Mhm.
same when you're working on a script. When you're doing a script and it's you tend to work on it in a way that's very limited. But all of a sudden, if you do a character voice, you're totally unlimited.
Yeah.
There's no limitation. You're not holding yourself back. So it's the same thing with support. When you have support around you, you're not going to hold yourself back.
Yeah.
So for me in my life, I I really started getting, I had support from my parents, but I never told them anything. Like I never said, so and so called me the N word today, and then
Mm.
the teacher put a dunce cap on my head. And then, I never told them anything. They didn't know. I
Wow.
felt too embarrassed to tell them. Now, I would tell other people, but still, I put a cap on it because I felt embarrassed and I felt like nothing like this is happening to anybody else.
Right.
So it made me feel kind of like an idiot. So when I moved to New York, it was not easy to get support, but the support that I did get was astronomical. And you know what? I actually, in the moment of it, I actually didn't recognize it as support. It
Hmm.
actually scared me
Wow.
because the attention to my talents or the attention to what I was wanting to do with my talents and getting full attention from people, I was not used to that. I'm used to keeping things to myself
Mhm.
and dealing with, whatever things people say to me direct that they might not say in front of other people that were not very kind.
Yeah.
I was just used to keeping it to myself. So when I came to New York, not everyone supported me, that's fine. But the people that did, kind of go out of their way, I actually felt scared.
Mm.
So that took me some time to get over.
'Cause
More
you weren't used
so,
to it.
yes, I wasn't used to
Yeah.
it, and I didn't recognize it as they were supporting me. I kind of recognized it like kinda like I had to prove myself.
Mhm.
That's how it kind of registered to me. So, when I moved here in my 20s into New York, I was, didn't realize it, but a lot of things in my childhood that I kept to myself emotionally, they showed up in my 20s. And how they showed up was as much as I loved people and I was with them and I did all kinds of things,
Yeah.
I also needed time by myself to grieve. So I would do that at night. I know this is going to sound odd. I would do that at night, and not every night, but a lot. And I would go off and walks by myself around Manhattan, and I would like sit on a stoop and I'd start thinking about things and then I'd start crying. But to the point where sometimes people would stop me and they would say, they'd come up to me on a stoop and they'd say, did someone die?
Mm.
Because that's how hard I would be thinking about things, but also choked up about these things.
Sure.
They didn't know how I was going to heal from them. And I also could tell that these things that were in me that needed to be healed were also the reasons why other doors weren't opening for me, that
Mhm.
perhaps for other people they were, because they
Yeah.
didn't have this thing, right? I finally did, by accident, again, I did find a counselor that
Hmm.
was so brilliant and so genius. And what we actually did was we bartered. So she liked my style. So she said to me, I need a stylist. And I
Oh,
said, that's
okay.
great because I need a therapist.
Ah.
But it was her that truly changed the trajectory of my subconscious, my conscious, my unconscious, to the point where um, I left doing nightclub altogether because, like I said, I wanted to start to make money in show business and support myself through show
Yeah.
business. It was because of her that I was able to do that, because of the different things she recommended for me to do to heal these kind of devastating, long lasting emotions. And I did everything she told me fully.
Wow.
And it truly did change the trajectory of my career. And that's when I got into voiceover.
Man, it's like carrying
Yeah.
a tumor for all
Yes.
these years,
Yes,
and you
Ray.
find the right surgeon who removes that tumor off of you, and you feel unburdened, and everything starts to change. You know that your mentality starts to change, your physicality starts to change, your
That's right.
positivity starts to change.
That's
Everything
right.
changes. I tell this story often about how I almost gave up on voiceover because I
Why do
thought I
you know?
was good enough, but I started seeing folks, uh, going back to that mountain reference where it felt like I was slowly trudging up, but they were sprinting. And I'm like, we started at the start line together, and the gun went off and went go. And here I am at a pretty good pace, and they are like Carl Lewis, and they already up there. I'm like, how the hell did you get up there?
Exactly.
And it was very debilitating mentally.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
I could tell in my performances when I would audition, I'm like, this is trash. I'm not gonna even submit it. And, I got to a point to where, you know, voiceover is fun. We all love to have fun, and I wasn't having fun anymore. And I'm like, this is the end. And going back to what you said about support, and especially from our significant others, my then girlfriend, Danielle, um inspired me to go and be amongst my tribe. And
Mhm,
I went to VO Atlanta, and just being around the same people and getting that energy, I'm like,
mhm.
maybe something is still in here. And had I not gone to that conference, um and I was under the heaviest of protests, just in the car the whole time, just lip
Oh,
poked out. I'm not gonna have any fun. I'm not gonna enjoy myself. It's gonna be, and it was the total opposite.
Ray! Yeah, the total opposite.
Yeah.
It is the
It
total opposite experience. When people mirror back to you who you are or where you're at,
Mhm.
it catapults you. There's no question about it. You know, when we were growing up, we didn't have people as role models out there in show business. We really didn't. They were kind of
True.
hidden, or one person would pop up. Look at it now, and look
Yeah.
at the difference it makes, and look at the result of within people, their freedom to be who they are
Yeah.
without feeling like they have to hide themselves. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect out there. God knows it's not,
Oh,
but
no.
it's a completely different world than when, well, at least when I was growing up, when, for example, Julia, that was a major revelation, that television show when Julia came
Mhm.
out. It was like, oh my God, you know, but it took so long
Yeah.
for anything to be regular, like as normal, as
Mhm.
considered normal. And you can see with these younger generations, it completely makes a difference.
Oh, I agree.
Completely.
I agree. Even for, you grew up in the early 80s and I came along in the late 80s, 90s, even then, because if you think about, like you said, Julia, and then there was this gap where you didn't see an African American person leading
You're right.
another show
You're
until
right.
maybe the Jeffersons came along. Um, Good Times came along, but
Hmm.
then there were still gaps, and it wasn't until and you had some shows that came and went. I remember a show that Gladys Knight was on called Charlie and Company.
Oh,
Uh, See, you didn't probably even know that.
no,
It
no.
came and went so quickly. You had Charlie and Company. There's a couple of other shows that kinda came and went, and just when you thought, "Oh, they they're starting to see us again," and then,
That's right.
oh, they
Boom,
didn't. Then the
boom.
Cosby Show came and Different World came, and the door started to open again. Now, um, you know, you can see that we're sorta everywhere on streaming,
Yeah,
on the major networks too.
yeah.
So I totally understand that aspect of it. Um, so now that you have gotten this tumor removed, um, let's talk about the evolution of Joan because you've carried the burden of the things that happened to you in San Francisco. You've taken
Mhm,
that same burden, taken it to New York, and it's like,
mhm.
what am I doing with myself? Because I know I need to be here, but
Yeah,
because of the traumas inside of me, it's like having a car that you know can do 200 miles an hour, but they have a limiter on it.
yeah,
Someone has now
totally.
taken that limiter off of you, and talk about your new starting point and what happens with you in your career from there.
Well, my new starting point transitioned from, you know, music videos, not that I got tons, but I did do some major ones that actually put me on the map. And so I wasn't sure if I was going to continue doing it because there was also something kind of degrading a little bit, just with some
Yeah,
of the male ideas at that time. It was like, so what I did was I got a manager, and the manager worked very hard for me, but it wasn't easy getting stuff because I was new.
yeah.
So he got me on a cable show, and this cable show was not like cable today. It literally was access cable. But
Gotcha.
this woman, her name was Tucci. The name of the show was Tucci Live. She was hysterical. So so he got me on the show, and what I did was I did a segment where I was talking about the New York nightlife, but I was doing it like a character. Like I had a
Okay.
character voice. This is before voiceover. I was doing it like a character. I had incredible costume, you know, nightlife costumes on, left over from doing Josephine Baker and all that. So I was talking about, you know, the different people like Madonna and all kinds of people that were really hot and what they were doing in the different nightclubs.
Yeah.
After that segment really went off well, I was sitting in my manager's apartment and I happened to notice an article in Backstage Magazine. It was an ad and it said voiceover. It said regular voice, cartoon voices. And for some reason, without knowing what voiceover was even, I just thought, I'm going to contact her. So I contacted her. Her name was Joni Robbins. She's now passed away, but she was an incredible animation and character voice actress. So I went and I studied with her. I took 4 lessons with her, but I was on fire because one of the things that how I stopped myself in dance, although there may have been, outside obstacles that stopped me as well, but
Yeah.
I mean, how I operated with myself, I already knew that I let those go, that I was going to start voice acting from a fearless,
Mhm.
unstoppable perspective. So when I took these 4 lessons, I did a demo reel. It was a 2-minute demo reel. Every single voice was a different character. Like when you listen to it, you wouldn't think, oh, it's the same person. For some reason, after doing all these imitations of people, I just had the ability to step in shoes, whether it was my own character stuff or other people. So we laid that out. And I said to myself, I'm going to drop this off, not mail it. I'm going to drop this off. I'm going to start with the top talent agencies in the business and I'm going to work my
Mhm.
way down. Well, 3 of them wanted to sign me off my demo
Wow.
reel. And so something magical happened. Again, people in voiceover, they're very supportive. And you don't necessarily realize that when you first get in the industry. You discover it once
Yeah.
you're in.
True.
One of the talent agencies, Buckwald, they wanted to sign me. And in the end, I signed with them because I felt like their energy matched mine. They were no joke. They got things done.
Mhm.
They had a kind of different style than I would have preferred, but I felt like their energy was exactly matching mine.
Sure.
There was this older gentleman in the elevator when I was going to another agency. It was Abrams. And he said, we were having conversation in the elevator as I was going to go up and drop off my demo reel. And he said, you don't know who I am, but I'm blah, 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 blah. And I didn't know who that was. And I was like, oh, didn't know who it was. Anyway, we started talking. And one of the things I said, I'm just looking to get an agent. And I've just done this demo reel. And I explained it to him. And I said to him, do you think anyone will listen to it? And he went like that. So when the elevator doors opened, he stormed out like lickety fast. I went up to the receptionist and I explained who I was and I put my demo down. By the time I turned around to leave, he had gotten one of the agents out. That agent took me in his office,
What?
listened to my demo, and within 5 seconds, he said, I can't believe this is you. And he hadn't even heard it all.
Man.
He also called his secretary and I'm not kidding. He said, hold all my calls. Like it was like a dream come true. And so they wanted to sign me. And then another agency did. Nothing dramatic happened. They just called me and they wanted to sign me.
Yeah.
And I actually got referred by someone. But I went with Buckwald because of that matched energy. And also my contact, my agent that I signed with, I really loved her. And there was a certain level that I got her and she got me. And we had similar kind of issues. So right off the bat, I felt supported. I felt like I didn't mind working hard. I actually love it. So I got her Rolodex, literally her Rolodex. I went to every single person on that Rolodex except for the few people that were outside of New York City. I dropped off my demo and I made sure I even had a conversation with them and I shook their hands. Sometimes I auditioned right there on the spot in the lobby. So immediately I got a, Olay commercial. I got all kinds of things right off the bat. I got a promo that ended up being my bread and butter in voiceover promos. But I got things right away because without anyone telling me, I already knew from my experience that being a horse for the first time let out of its gates, which is what it felt like, getting the proper people that I could directly contact and showing up and doing my song and dance a little bit, it got me results, the results that I had dreamed of.
Yes.
So that's how it actually started for me. And I just went up from there. And even though it happened quickly, I didn't take it for granted. I truly nurtured it. I truly used networking as a way to get work, as opposed to, yeah, I was at every audition. But I'm saying I would talk to people and people would say to me, this is in New York, people would say to me, I've never even gotten a job from an audition. And I was like,
Wow.
because I go to so many, right? They said the jobs that I get are from networking. And I was like, oh, which I did not mind doing.
Yeah.
I did
Talk
not mind
talk
it.
about that because I think nowadays, um, and this is where technology can be a blessing and a
Yeah,
curse.
absolutely.
Talk about how the magic of networking, you know, how important it is. Yes, it's cool to have an agent, and yes, you can go on 50 million auditions, but talk about the power of networking and how it's really a bridge builder between you as a talent and those potential clients out there that's looking for you or who may not even know you're there because you
That's
haven't
right.
put in the work to, to let people know, hey, I know a guy. I would be that guy. And so talk about how important networking is, even in today's voiceover.
I think the most important aspect to networking is face to face. I don't think the internet, especially if it's cold.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, you got to start somewhere. But I think, like that's voiceover. It's producer based panels. And not only that, but the networking that we set up. The reason why we set it up that way is because I know how critical it is to getting work. Just because you're not seen doesn't mean that when you're seen, that's when people really get it.
Yeah.
That's when people really ingratiate themselves to you because they meet you. Now, not every personality is like, wow, but in today's world, in voiceover, the most results you will get are seen. Period.
Facts.
Period. And that goes past your demo reel. Yes, you have to have a kick-ass demo reel. Yes, you have to have, certain marketing tools that are, you don't have to have a ton of credits, but you do have to be specific about them depending on who you're targeting.
Mhm.
Yes, you do. But at the same time, when people meet you, and of course, when you're at a conference, there's incredible, as you know, there's incredible energy, there's
Yes.
incredible atmosphere. And in particular, at That's Voiceover, we prime the producers, the casting directors, the buyers to want to be around talent, to uplift them and hire them.
Yes.
It's part of the prep for That's Voiceover with the different casting people, producers, talent agents, and all that. So as a result, because people connect visually, I'm telling you, it makes all the difference. And also, I think the most important thing about networking is it's not totally about you. It's
Yeah.
also what you can provide for other people. And you may not always be on that level, but you can certainly look for how you can serve the people that you're pursuing. How
Mhm.
can you be of service to them as opposed to begging them for work or constantly on their back because you want work? It's not really how it works.
Yeah.
It is not how it works. Really, it's what you can do for other people that ingratiates them to you. And you have to find it within your own being, your own, talents, your own marketing. You have to find it for yourself. And I really believe that a lot of things that you experience in voiceover happen because you experience it, not because someone tells you to.
Wow.
Yes, there's a ton of guidance out there, and some of it is amazing and some of it isn't. But I do think the thing that's missing is the fact that you yourself have to put yourself out there and experience it for yourself. That's when ideas come to you. That's
Mhm.
when you look at someone face to face, that you can see if you're opening the door in their mind as they're opening the door in yours. You can see it, it's tangible. But you have to actually be doing it as opposed to in the background or on off, you have to be on the field or on the court. Like if you're playing
Yeah.
basketball, you have to be a player on the court, not in the stands watching. That's when people start to criticize. And that's the most criticism comes when people aren't even on playing on the court.
Mm.
So when you criticize and heavily criticize, especially if you don't even know what you're talking about, that's when the doors close for you.
Mm.
And you can't help it because there's actually a lot of guilt, inwardly. I think there's a lot of guilt when you criticize people, especially when you don't know what you're really talking about. You think you're alleviating something in you, but you're actually limiting yourself to what you really do out there because it scares you how badly you're criticizing other people, which means you must be also thinking, I'm going to get the same criticism,
Yeah.
which makes you not want to go out there. But the whole thing is you have to be uninhibited, not inhibited, but you have to be
Mm.
uninhibited if you're going to operate on a level in which you want to connect with people to get work, to create a body of work so that actually people know you more.
That's right.
But you can't do it if you're off in the corner criticizing everything and everybody because you won't give it to yourself. You won't give it to
Yeah.
anyone else. So why should you give it to you? A lot of things come back to mirroring what kind of really is there that you're not
Mhm.
willing to look at, but you're certainly willing to project it.
How do you feel about, because when you started in voiceover, um,
Hmm.
there weren't a lot of female
No,
actors doing it.
no, no.
Um, and you look at how things are now, there isn't a commercial or a game or a cartoon you can't hear,
You're right.
um, without a woman's touch, so to speak.
You're
And
right.
to go even a step further, women of color are now at the forefront.
They
We
are.
still have a ways to go in VO just for women in general, but talk about
Right. Right.
as a woman, how you feel, um, the evolution of women in VO, and then that second barrier, the evolution of women of color in voiceover, and how it was between when you came out the gate to where you
Mhm.
see it now.
Well, to me, that was the biggest block was being a woman and being a woman of color that you couldn't necessarily identify as
Yeah.
Black or Hispanic, or, there was always a guessing with people.
Mhm.
People were very unfamiliar with the type. Now they're not. Now,
Yeah.
actually, being racially ambivalent is a hit.
It's a
But
thing, yeah.
more so, yeah, but more so with the younger generations. But what I'm saying is when I came up, not only was I pursuing, promos and all kinds of things, but I would constantly get from people, oh, we don't hire women. This was in the 90s, kids. They would literally say, oh, we don't hire women. Oh, almost like, oh my God, I haven't heard a woman's voice in so long, not even pursuing this. Wow, how are you? Yeah, we don't use women. So when Lifetime came out, it was such a big deal because they were a woman's channel. I mean, I'm telling you, they created a breakthrough for women in voiceover in particular. Also, when I first started, women really just did women's products.
Mm.
Very rarely was it something else. Now, I pursued, even at that time, I pursued movie trailers because you have to realize something when you're kind of wanting to meet people, wanting to network with people. I didn't use anything as a barrier or an excuse oh, I won't talk to them. But a lot of things I had to do started from scratch, but I just kept my focus on it because I
Yeah.
really wanted to work. And I didn't want being a woman, especially a woman of color, to stop it. Now, when people didn't see me and they heard me, they weren't thinking a woman of color. It's only when they saw me. And then they got confused. They like, let's just say I got hired to do cartoons or cartoon
Yeah.
voices or imitations. I remember sometimes I'd walk into the room and the producer would turn around and go, can I help you? And I'd say, yes, hi, I'm Joan Baker. They'd look at me like, what? Like you do character
Mm.
voices? I got that a lot. I also got, and this to me was the epitome of where we've come. I used to be very close with an engineer. He was in New York. He was legendary. He was older. He also passed away now, but he was older, so he knew everybody. He knew
Yeah.
all people that were hiring voiceover talent. So he would constantly, he was better than agents. He was constantly, sending people my demo, unbeknownst to me, but constantly sending, a producer, a buyer would say, I'm looking for a woman for this. And he'd say, use Joan Baker and send my reel. And they hire me. I got so many jobs from him. I mean, it really was extraordinary. But one time I got a job with a major brand, and it was radio campaign for this major brand. And he said to me, I sent your demo to her and she hired you. But he said, I just want you to know she does not know how to work with blacks. And I was like, wait, I didn't know what he meant. So I get into the room, and we do like the first take, and she's shaking her head, and the engineer puts his finger on the button, but he had his back turned to me, so she couldn't see that he had his finger on the button. And she said, God,
Yeah.
she's really great, but can she add more cotton to her voice?
Huh.
Yet she hired me from my demo reel.
Right.
But because I guess the engineer told her I was black, she just assumed I'd be a certain type, voice type.
Yeah.
And when she didn't hear it, she wanted more cotton.
Wow.
That's how far we've come. Okay? You will not hear someone today go, oh, we don't hire women. And you certainly won't hear a director say, we need more cotton.
No, I imagine you would not.
No.
I've
No, I
heard
was
some things.
But that one takes the cake. I know it. I
Yeah.
know that takes the cake. And I want you to know I was unbelievably stunned, but I did not want to betray my friend. So I literally had no expression on my face, and I was just going over the script as if his finger wasn't on the button. So I just went about my way. But on the inside, I mean, it was like someone took a pin and popped it. So I actually have spent also some of my career educating. It's just turned out this way, educating people on working with talent. I did an event one year at Promax called Directing and Working with Voiceover Talent. Now, it wasn't necessarily specific for people of color, although I have done that too. But this was in general. And it was a huge hit at Promax. And so I hosted it, and I got different people on the panel that talked about it from directing a talent perspective. So I had a couple coaches and voice directors.
Yeah.
So what I did is I chose different producers from different television networks to come up and read copy and then get adjusted, right, from the coaches.
Yeah.
At the end of the conference, a couple of VP TV directors stood up and said, now I understand why voiceover talent gets the kind of money they do. And it was because a lot of people in television, producers, thought they could do that. You know how people think they can do that, right?
Yes.
Not untrained, they can do that. And they were resenting the voiceover talent for making money, the kind of money they were making doing it. That's
Some
what came
things
out of
never
the
change.
conference. Hopefully it got better, in terms of some of that, but it was heavy duty dense with that until that session at Promax. It really, it got people talking. And when I mean people, I don't mean voiceover talent. I mean creative directors, senior VP directors, VP directors, because they got up and did the work and this shit's hard.
Yeah.
They just had no idea because they were on the court. Because they were in the seats, not on the court. I got them on the court and their minds changed. And they could drop the resentment, which was present.
Mm-hmm.
So again, learning a lot, by observing and watching, but also putting myself on the court. even at times when I felt dejected.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever thought about quitting because, times do get rough in voiceover, but you
Oh,
have to
sure.
keep going. You almost have to, keep shedding the skin like a snake.
Mhm.
You have to be the type of person, I think, that is willing to reinvent themselves without the notion of somehow that's bad or somehow they have to change. I don't. It's your career.
Mhm.
You have to change. And
Absolutely.
as I always say, that sometimes you have to be the performer you want to be, you have to become unrecognizable to who you know yourself to be the kind of performer you say you want to
Yeah.
be. So you go through things and good for you. It's part of
Absolutely.
it,
No, it,
right?
it truly is. I used to uh tell people, they was like, "Well, so what is it like being a voice actor?" I said, "Well, imagine and this will be a interesting segue." I said, "Imagine you're speed dating and you have 30 seconds to impress someone to go out with them. But then let's say you make the date, but then on the date, it's like, "Hey, I had a really great time. Well, can I see you again?" Well, we'll see. Now you got to go back to speed dating again, impress somebody else, have them take you out on another day. I say you are constantly you're constantly dating. There's no marriage in VO. You are perpetually
Constant.
dating.
Even when you think you're married, you're still dating. Like even
That is
when you're the
correct.
voice of Verizon, you're still dating. Because at any given time, especially if you go buy a house, they'll change their direction, which means they'll change the voice,
Yep.
right? No, you're always dating. So you have to love dating. You have to love dating. And you have to find ways of dating that you can flourish. And I don't think anybody can tell you how to do that. It's individual. It's like a blueprint, a thumbprint. You can certainly get ideas from other people. You can certainly get inspired, but that doesn't necessarily give you the path. There is no one path. You
Yes.
are your own path. I am my own path. And the beauty of that is inspiring, knowing that I'll be able to carve my own path.
Mhm.
But I have to step onto the court in order to do it. It's not just going to be hearsay.
Correct. And here's where the segue comes in. Speaking of
Okay.
speed dating. So, you create a little thing that we all know called That's Voiceover. What inspired you to say, I think I need to put something out there um, so that I can bring the worlds of, the creatives together with the
Yes.
talent? Like what inspired that to come about?
I think networking in general inspired me to know that it was all about the world of the buyer or all about the world of the producer or all about the world of the writer. It was always about getting into their mindset if I wanted to partner with them. Now,
Hmm.
once you partner with people like this, they're interested in you.
Yeah.
But it's your career, so you have to initiate the interest. So I know how critical this was. And so I wrote Secrets of Voiceover Success, right?
You mean that back there?
I mean, that back there. And that actually came out of something human. And it came out of my father passing away from Alzheimer's and in the grieving of it, because my dad was truly instrumental in my life. So I wanted to give something back. I always wanted to be a humanitarian. I just didn't know how that would show up. And so when my dad passed away, coupled with I was taking a course on giving back.
Hmm.
I happened to be taking a very powerful course on giving back to my community. So coupled those two things together, and I created Secrets of Voice Over Success. I incorporated my community. The proceeds went to Alzheimer's Association. Now the book now is pretty much out of print. So I now donate in other ways to Alzheimer's. But Rudy and I are actually working on a second book that I think is going to be out October. But
Wow.
so out of Secrets of Voiceover Success, I wanted to showcase the talent in the book.
Yeah.
So Rudy and I created in 2006, we created a conference called Voices Behind the Scenes, and it included most of the people. It was the first time there was any kind of conference, voiceover
Mhm.
conference. And it was a lineup of the Don LaFontaines, the Bill Ratners, the Steve Zern-Kilton, who did Law and Order, the Open to Law and Order.
Yes.
I mean, it was literally the litany of us on stage at the Museum of the Moving Image. It was hosted, who I pursued, Alan Coulter, the late Alan Coulter, who was the show
Yes.
announcer on David Letterman, who
Yep.
I have to tell you was absolutely brilliant. He is brilliant at hosting. So one of the reasons why he was interested is because the proceeds from the event were going to go to the Alzheimer's Association. And at the time, he told me, I think it was his mom that passed away from Alzheimer's. So that connection was really powerful for voice actors.
Yeah.
And at the time, that name was actually not a household name. Alzheimer's was not yet a household name, although it was very much happening.
Mhm.
So from that night, we donated proceeds to the Museum of the Moving Image and the Alzheimer's Association. It was a huge hit, but it was a huge hit for the voice actors in the audience that came, who had never seen really voice actors talk about the craft or talk
Yeah.
about what goes on behind the scenes. Behind the scenes has always interested me. So from that event, reinvented itself a couple times into That's Voiceover. So we are almost in the 20th year of That's Voiceover. We are absolutely the
Jeez.
longest running conference out there. Again, it didn't happen because I was going for being the longest conference or being anything
Yeah.
other than what it provided for voiceover talent, and also what I could provide as a humanitarian. I was just so blown away that my dad had come back in that way in my life, that I could really channel him for this Alzheimer's, which I was actually scared to read about because, again, it wasn't a household word. It
Mhm.
wasn't. It wasn't until and my dad passed away 2 years before the book came out.
Oh.
I was so bound and determined. So that's voiceover came about, where the whole focus was for voice actors was to reveal what goes on behind the scenes in voice acting. So right away, we had interactive conferences. Interactive panels. Right away, we had a talent spotlight where Rudy and I pursued CBS, not the same CBS we have now, but the one in New York. We
Gotcha.
pursued them to give away a promo job, a paid promo job to one of the contestants that won. So that's something we did right away. And you were on the edge of your seat, not because so much of who was going to win, even though that was also exciting. And it was about what went on behind the scenes, and you could hear the reads, and you could hear, you could see the dialogue that went between talent and producer. You
Mhm.
can really eliminate the unknown. And that's what we wanted to do with That's Voiceover. So we wanted to include all kinds of, which we did from the very beginning, all kinds of casting directors, talent agents, managers, but people high up there. We wanted to reveal a conversation that goes on between them and talent so that people could learn at a progressive rate
Yeah.
what it really takes, and how really in the end, you want to be able to have a conversation with anybody in the business, whether you're a talent manager, a talent agent, a casting director, a producer, a buyer. You want to be able, an engineer, you want to be able to not just talk to your peers, but to talk to anybody else in the voiceover industry. Why? Because that's how you become memorable for them, and that's eventually how you get work. To me, this is top notch when a producer says to you, without you, they know you, you know them and all that. And they say to you, I wrote this script because of you.
Yeah. That's
That's,
cool.
yeah, exactly. But they won't know to do that if they don't know you.
Mhm. True.
So we created That's Voiceover to reveal a conversation, an ongoing dialogue of what goes on behind the scenes in voice acting. That was one of the very critical aspects to That's Voiceover, and it still is. It's important. It
It
does
really is.
eliminate fear. It does eliminate the unknown. It does help people to network and pursue what they say they want to do, because we have to pursue it in voiceover. It is not handed to you. It's not handed to you. It's a career. That's why you're an entrepreneur. It's a career that you have to initiate. That's why everything falls on you. Even if you
Yes.
talk to someone and they say they're interested, great. How do I follow up with you? And then if they tell you how, then do it. Then do it. You have to be your word in the matter,
Yeah.
or it doesn't work. It just does not work. And you have to, in the
Absolutely.
moment, let go of any kind of inner dialogue or conversation you're having with yourself that would stop that from happening,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So sometimes there's therapy involved with voiceover.
Oh, you better believe it, sister. Uh, that it is.
That's
Um,
really the genesis.
yeah. I think this business, while it can be very exciting, it can be very
Yeah.
lucrative, it's also very humbling.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you can get to a point where, again, using that mountain reference, you can actually make it to the top and you're looking
Yeah.
down like, I made it. And then all of a sudden you have a slip and you fall right back to the bottom and
Exactly.
you
There's
now
so
have to
many.
find a way to ascend once again.
Because I believe that this is a career of truly self-development. Like, if you peel back all the onion layers, it's truly about developing yourself.
Yeah.
That's why you're going to fall sometimes, because you're not perfect, because the industry is not perfectly put together.
Mhm.
So it really does reveal to you where you're at, where you're truly at. And it's about climbing the mountain, but knowing that it's okay if you fall back a couple of steps. Just get back right back on the horse and keep going,
Yep.
because ultimately it's about learning. Now, I also believe we're in a career like that of a tournament. Like tennis, you have tons of people that start, and then as time goes on, they get knocked up, knocked up,
Mhm.
knocked off, and then there's two people left, and then there's the winner, right?
That's
So
correct.
it's like that. So it's like, for me, in my sphere, as far as I can see, I'm the one of the few that has reinvented many times over, but has stuck to my focus in voice acting. And however the branches of the tree fall, they fall. And I'm willing to put myself through it. I don't know many people in my sphere where where they're the last one standing in the tournament.
Yeah.
But that's exactly how this career works. You have to be the last one standing. And then all of a sudden, not only do you realize the different things you've done, but you can also trust that and create a body of work that really mirrors who you are, and you can use it to go to the next step, whatever that may be for you. I've seen it over and over again, including myself, over and over again. The body of work really reflects who you are, and you really use that as a ticket to go to the next level,
Yes.
along with
So,
networking, along with all the self-development.
absolutely. Well, I have held you long enough, but before we go, two things I want to talk about. One is Sovas and how that came to be. And I love a good love story, and I have
Oh.
heard your story a few times. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and going back to what we were saying about how important it is to have folks in our lives that support us. You have a gentleman in your life that is that's my boy, that's my main man. And it's very rare that if I see you, I don't see him. Um, talk about how you're in your career and you just
Mhm.
minding your business, and then
I
all of a
was.
sudden this chap and see and what you guys don't know, and we'll get into it, their relationship when it comes to dates in the relationship is very uh tell the story and how anniversaries and birthdays come into play.
Okay. So, um, I had gotten a job at ABC News, but I want to say that I almost missed the job at ABC News because at the time the job came through, they just started beepers and I didn't have a beeper. All I could do was call my
Wow.
machine.
Yeah.
This turned my head around and I got a beeper after this. But so what happened was earlier that day, I had dropped off. Okay. I had overheard someone at my talent agency talk about someone getting a booking for Good Morning America Radio. And I was like, I'd never heard of that. I like Good Morning America Radio. I want to do that. So I went to my apartment. I started calling I didn't know who to call. So I just started calling the different departments at ABC and someone said, "Oh, you want to talk to so-and-so in on-air creative." I'd never heard that title before. So I said, "Yeah." So they sent me to on-air creative on the phone. I spoke to the head of on-air creative's secretary. And she said to me, I said to her, I would love to drop off my demo reel. I will happen to be in your area tomorrow. Do you mind if I drop it off? And she said, I'll be here and I'll come downstairs and get it. I was like, wow, great. So the next day I go in and I meet Jane again, face to face.
Yes.
Okay. And so apparently Jane put my demo reel on her boss's desk. Rudy had actually started ABC, he was a producer writer at ABC News 6 weeks earlier. So just so happened that after I dropped off my demo reel, I followed up with Jane 3 days later. I was at a job for HBO. I call up Jane and I said, did Mr. Smith get my demo reel yet? And she goes, damn it. She said, I put it on his desk 3 days ago and he still hasn't heard it. I'm going to get him to listen. Again, I met her in person. Okay. So I wasn't expecting anything. By 5 o'clock, no, I'm sorry. By 4:30, I went to a restaurant and I was eating dinner and I call my machine and there's like 6 or 7 messages from Buckwald freaking out saying, how did you get this booking from ABC News? No woman has gotten a booking from ABC News in so long. How'd you do it? But Joan, you have to call us back to confirm, right? But all these messages. So I call them back. As I call them back, the waiter was putting the food on the table. So I pay the bill. I get the food in a bag. I hail a cab. Literally, I was on 86 going to 66. And in the cab, I was saying, hurry, I'm pregnant, right? 'Cause I did not want to be late for the 5 o'clock meeting. I get there. I jump out of the cab. I go, it takes steps to go upstairs. So I go through the different steps you go through. I go up the escalator, go up the elevator. The elevator door opens and Rudy's there with the clipboard. I'm like, hey. He's like, hi. Meanwhile, I was like, so it was the first time I met Rudy and we went into this cove and we were talking. And what struck me was Rudy had dreads. Not only did I not see any blacks, but I certainly didn't see anyone with dreads. And I felt like he must be brilliant. This is what I'm saying to myself. He must be genius if he's working here with, he had beautiful locks, by the way. But I just thought so highly of him. But I didn't think anything past that, other than I hope we're friends. I like people. So he directed me on the spot. The spot went on air right away. It was a hit. I found out from the creative director that they hadn't used a woman in 8 years doing a promo.
Man.
So that seemed like fate to me. Although again, I still wasn't calculating he's going to be my boyfriend, but I wasn't calculating anything. I just thought, wow, the whole thing was just so fated. So Rudy and I actually didn't see each other again until he called me. It just so happened on my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And so we planned to meet, and my birthday is October 14th, but we planned to meet on October 24th. By the way, when I heard his voice on my message machine, I went, oh my God, I'm in trouble. I just kind of said that to myself. And then, so we met at a coffee shop. 4 years later, we got married, and our theme was coffee. We met at coffee shop for a while before we started dating. But once we started dating, we immediately clicked on career, big time. And at the time, I was teaching in a casting office, and I was already asking, networking with casting directors and producers and stuff. And my agent at Buckwald, no one had ever come to a class before and taught, voice actors. That
Yeah.
was completely new. So I asked Rudy if he would do that, if he would be interested. And he said yes. And right away we got, we should work together and do this. So we started creating workshops in lofts. We would go to lofts, different lofts in New York, because we had, I don't know, we didn't necessarily have a studio. So we had to rent, but we didn't want to rent in kind of like a dingy classroom. So we got lofts in New York. We created a company, and we started teaching the producer perspective and the actress perspective of voice acting. Nobody was doing that.
Right.
And we got incredible people to come in and as guest speakers. This notion was totally new, so that about 10 years later, when I created the book Secrets of Voiceover Success, we used that same format that was so successful, just that we put it together in a kind of different way, in a kind of bigger way than we did in a classroom. So every dot that had been established between me and Rudy, we established it. We re-established these things as time went on, not knowing that we were. But also in the meantime, Rudy and I, our love developed really, kind of like not quickly, but thoroughly.
Yeah.
And there was nothing was rushed. And at the same time, there seemed to be an urgency in the background in terms of us connecting. It was almost like angels' wings on our backs. Every person talking to us, every person in our life was geared towards our relationship working.
Yeah.
It was an odd kind of blessing to have, because I'm telling you something, Trey, I could not get arrested before. I did not have angels' wings on my back creating, I actually just wanted to have a companion, but
Yeah.
that seemed to be hard. That seemed to be very hard in New York, when you also have, you're also developing your career. I'm not saying I didn't have my dates, or I'm not saying I didn't even have my, relationships, i.e. not monogamy, no monogamy involved. But I'm saying, I just wanted to have a really wonderful companion.
Yeah.
That was not looking at other people, all that. I did not. I had a boyfriend when I first moved to New York. And then after we broke up, it took 10 years before another relationship hit. I mean, in the way that this hit. I had dates and all that, but nothing like this. Nothing. And I always wanted something where we could work together, we could create a life together, we could build it together. I just didn't think it was out there for me. I truly did not think it was going to happen, because there was no evidence along the way that it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was overwhelmingly happy when it kind of worked out that we were the same in a lot of ways. And just that he came from a different perspective in show business than I did, but we were like the same driven, same focus, same desire, same wanting to have love in our life that we could build. You can't make that out of somebody.
True.
You have to come in the door that way. And so I had also, right before I met Rudy, I actually dated this producer. Very brief. We were close friends for years, and then it fell into a relationship that was brief, and then for some reason it disappeared. And I was so sad about it that I said, I will never date anybody as a producer or talent agent. I will never date. No. So when Rudy came along, I already thought, oh, I wasn't thinking, oh, we'll date. So I was already a no, in that way.
Mhm.
But I loved making friends and allies, etc. So that's all I thought. Rudy, on the other hand, told me that he thought it right away.
Oh.
By the way, people at ABC that first day kept teasing Rudy that he was going to be working with his girlfriend.
Oh, boy.
So, like I said, there was just all these different angles that could not be ignored.
Mhm.
Also there's weird things like my mom and his mom, their both name is May.
May, yeah.
They both were born in the South. They both were born in the 30s. And they
Wow.
both had us at age 27. Rudy's mom was
Really?
27. Yes. No, there's all kinds of like coincidences that this thing could
Mhm.
not be ignored. This love thing could not be ignored. And we weren't going to ignore it. It's been it for both of us, it's changed our lives. And at the same time, I had my relationship stuff. Rudy had his, he'd been married before and all that. So it also gave us hope about relationship and how we can create it to be something special. We didn't have to rely on kind of like old residue from
Yeah.
relationships from me and relationships from the other person. We could create it newly. And that's something we got somehow together. And that's what we
Just
did.
magic. I mean,
It, it's a miracle. That's all I can say.
I
A
think it's the
miracle.
I think it's the universe's way of saying, Joan Baker, you've been through a lot of stuff. So here's what we're gonna do. From this point on, you'll never have to go through it alone. And all of a sudden, and you did your part, by networking and meeting the girl at the front desk. But then that door opens and you see that guy with the headset, and you're like, whoa.
I was like, my mouth dropped. And Rudy also told me that when I shook his hand, I went something like that on his palm. I'm like, I
Oh,
don't shake people's hand like that. But he claims I did. Like somehow I knew he knew. I'm telling you, when I say there's these all kinds of coincidences, it's incredible. That
yeah.
once we were just like our hair stood on end. And that might be for other people as well in their relationships, but somehow it was very obvious. So to know that, by the way, Rudy and I have been together now 30 years, 30
Wow.
years, and we've been married 26 years this year.
Mhm.
It does not feel that way at all.
Really?
It does not feel it, not
See, I,
at
I can't
all.
I can't wait to get there. It'll be 7 for us. Only 7 this June. Um,
Only 7.
I know,
That's great.
Yeah. Oh no, I take I am living every minute of it. I just always I pinch myself because I was a perpetual dater myself. And I had gotten to the
Wow.
point that I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna live the bachelor life and do what I do. And I literally had gotten to the point I was done with relationships. And she
Mm.
and I had been in a prior relationship, but she had gotten married. I'm like, well, that ship has sailed.
Oh, whoa. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
she reached out to me after her divorce and we just started hanging out as friends. I took her to brunch. Um, and then that year we had a hurricane hit Florida real bad, in Jacksonville where we were, and I lost power at my place. I ended up going with her to her mom's house, which was a couple of miles from where I live. She came from across town,
Mm.
because she lived closer to the water and they were evacuating people from the beach. So we go to her mom's house, power's on, AC's blowing, and then poof, everything cuts off. So now we're eating finger food by candlelight, and
Oh.
and we just started reminiscing about, we had good times together, and power was still out at my place, so I stayed with her for like a week and a half. At this time, I was doing VO part time, and I was working during the day. And I remember my buddy saying, "Hey, man, we got power back on this side of town." And I told her, I said, "Hey, power's back on my side of town." And you could see in her face, she's like, "Oh." And I'm like, "Well, I could stay if you want me to stay." And she's like, "Well, do you want to stay?" And I'm like, "Well, do you want me to stay?" And yeah, I stayed.
And you
And
stayed
then
ever since.
I stayed. That was the tail end of 2016. Um by 2017 we were living together, and then June 18th, 2018, we said I do. And it's been a fun ride ever since. So,
Oh, Trey,
you know,
that is so
we'll get
wonderful.
to our 30. We can't
Yeah,
wait.
you will. And I used to say the same thing when I'd meet someone and they say, "Oh, we've been married, 25 years, 30 years." I think to myself, I can't wait. But also, I want to say something about your story that I also find interesting about how kind of like the universe works. You let it go. You let it go, and then it came to you,
Yeah.
right? Because you said, "I'm done with relationships." So, in other words, you let it go. Same with me. I already decided I was not going to date any producer ever. But I had made a firm decision. It's not something you can trick yourself with. It's kind of, you have to make a firm decision about things. And when you let it go, I feel like that's when things really show up.
I
So
agree.
that brings me to things like goals. Goals are great, but you have to be willing to let your goals go to see how life shows up around it.
Yeah.
It can't be so persnickety. I just find it chokes it. And also, you miss things because your perfect picture on how things are supposed to be, when something comes in that's not aligned with that picture, you will reject it, you will dismiss it. But that thing may have been the thing that creates a breakthrough that leads to your picture of how you think it
Yes.
should be. So, I feel like a lot of times it happens when we let go of our pictures.
I like that. I'm gonna have to start using that. All right,
Yeah.
finally, let's talk about uh how Sovas came about. And um, you know, here's something that, to my knowledge, has not been done before, where the voice actors and the demo producers and any and everything that is voiceover finally gets a chance to be celebrated. Because
Yes.
we're stuck in a booth 2, 3, 4 hours a day, and we're just plugging along because we're just doing the work. And yeah, we may post, "Hey, I did this thing," or someone will say, "Hey, I heard you on so and so," and it's good
Right.
to have that camaraderie amongst your peers in that space. But then to go a step further and say, "Look, I won this thing because, you know, the same people who have lauded and applauded me in this space now say you are now among the best at what you do." What inspired you to go that route with it, and start the organization and to start the awards?
Well, it actually happened piecemeal along the way. It was never like at some point this it all hit us at once, right? But
Yeah.
like for example, because in New York you actually have to show up. Like you have to show up at casting houses and stuff like that. And in New York, that did not stop until the pandemic, until 2020. But the entire time, you did not need a booth in New York. You were always going out, whether it was casting, engineer house, your talent agency. You did, as a matter of fact, if you lived outside of New York and you had an audition, you couldn't, and you had a booth, you still had to come. You had to show up
Wow.
until 2020. So when you're in casting rooms and you're waiting to, audition, there's a lot of conversation going on. So one of the things I picked up on a regular basis from people, and I wasn't necessarily thinking this way, but a lot of people were saying how they never get recognized as a voiceover talent. Like they would say every industry out there has recognition, has awards, has a way to create morale,
Yeah.
has a way to bridge what they do as creatives to, as talent to what creatives do in terms of hiring them. They're like every industry. Now, it's not a conversation that happened all the time, but over the years, it absolutely did. And people were upset about it, voiceover people, because they also felt like that is one way to leverage your career, because everybody outside of voiceover, any industry, they actually do look at awards.
Yes.
Because their industry is about getting them too. So marketing and advertising, every campaign they do is in the end, they want to get awarded for it because it keeps the client there. That's one way
Mhm.
to keep the client, is having good work be acknowledged. So this happened in every other way except for voiceover. So that's something that one stood out. Um, so by the time Rudy and I created That's Voiceover, we were starting to get that through the events. We were starting to get that there really was a lack of morale. There really was people in their booths all the time. They just did not have an opportunity to meet people.
Yes.
And so sometimes people were even using it as an excuse not to meet people, that they had some kind of success in voiceover, but they felt like if they met people, then they might get turned off by them, by meeting them
Mm.
or seeing them and how they don't match their face. So with that in mind, Rudy and I thought, with everything that we were seeing, so we were seeing that people were connecting at our conferences. We were seeing that there was some power in that, and that other notion was a myth. That was just someone's fear. So we had an advertising agency together called Push Creative, and it
Yeah.
was very successful for 17 years. So what we decided to do was we decided to fold Push Creative because of the intense need that we were receiving year after year about doing That's Voiceover. About
Mhm.
we had started speed dating. We had done the talent spotlight, and how we needed to kind of focus on building that. So we decided to fold Push Creative and turn it into a nonprofit, and that's where Society of Voice Arts came. Now, we also spoke with many people in the industry, not necessarily voice actors, but people that had nonprofits or people that were producers with production companies, et cetera, et cetera. And we also, Rudy's old boss at NBC, because Rudy had worked at NBC, he had won an Emmy for the Olympic Games on NBC, and his boss was in our building here at the Ed Sullivan Theater building, and he was working at the Emmy Awards. So we discussed what we were thinking about doing with him, and he came on board and helped us create the Voice Arts Awards in the image of the Emmy Awards.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and with his inspiration, and this guy is a perfectionist, stickler, IT, extraordinary. Like
Yeah.
his level of expertise to me was out of this world. And we became very, very close, but we leaned on him a lot in the beginning. And then it kind of turned around. Then the Emmys started leaning on us. So
Mm.
some of the ideas that we had implemented in the Voice Arts Awards, they started doing at the Emmys. Not the
Nice.
primetime Emmys, the more local
Like
ones.
the regional, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. They started, and they came to us. They even came to me and asked me if I would judge the Emmys. So it kind of turned around, but it was a lot of it was based on the extraordinary experience of Rudy's former boss. And we didn't expect that either. We just went to talk to him, and next thing you know, he was on board. He even talked to the Emmys about him being on board with us, helping us build the Voice Arts Awards
Yeah.
platform, and he got the okay. Now he's retired, but he still works for us.
That's pretty
He
cool.
he is a true genius, and anyone that knows him in the industry, because he came from the promo world, anyone that knows him knows he's brilliant. So
Yeah.
we were lucky that this collaboration happened to turn out the way it was, and he happened to be in the building. Because they hadn't talked to each other in years, just
Yeah.
that we happened to be in the building. So that was our inspiration. And also it helped us visualize it. And that was important to do, was to really, truly visualize it from the ground up. The intent is to not just create morale, but create a platform where voice actors could shine,
Yes.
where voice actors' voices and craft and all that we put into voice acting, which is not the average pouring yourself into something, that there was an opportunity to shine, to talk about it, to be acknowledged for it. That was truly important.
Yes.
And we still feel like it's important. It is one of the hardest things, to be honest, that we've ever done. We have many partnerships with people to help the platform flourish. And, a lot of things that people don't understand necessarily in these partnerships we have is they get paid.
Yes.
And it's not like we go to them and they go, "Oh, you're in the voiceover community. We'll do it for free." Everything Rudy and I, we put our own money into it. We've every month, all the money that our nonprofit gets, which is not me and Rudy, but our nonprofit goes, and it has to go right back into the events. So
Yes.
every last penny, whether it's money that we've got from sponsorships, or when people go to put their submissions in, right?
Yeah.
There is a cost, like any other awards platform. There is a cost, but that cost, people actually, we have to hire people to help us um, put these, put the entries through. It's not seamless, and we don't have AI. We hire human beings. So
Yes.
there's nothing is ever smooth almost with any submission. There's always a lot of work behind the scenes. And that is career from some people. Sometimes we have to hire people from the Emmys because it's such a specific skill that's being done that we can't just put out an ad for it, or we can't just have, someone volunteer and do it. We actually have to pay them to come in and look at thousands of submissions to see if they're in the right groove, to see if all the little nuggets are checking out. That takes a lot of time, and with every submission. So, we have to pay people. So it's not money that Rudy and I get. Rudy and I actually have to work for a living. We don't
Amen.
make money. No, we don't. Now, if we got a kick-ass sponsor, and we have a lot of medium kick-ass sponsors, but everything goes back to
Yeah.
the event. But if we had a one kick-ass sponsor, then we could probably get a salary. But we have yet to even come close to making a salary. But I'm talking about me and Rudy personally.
Correct.
No,
Gotcha.
we have. This has been a labor of love for us for almost 20 years now. And, these events, we do them at, the Beverly Hilton, Warner Brothers, top-notch places that just to rent out the space for 5 hours is six figures. I'm not talking about catering. I'm not talking about anything else. Hiring the staff, hiring the AV department. I'm not talking about anything but just renting the space bare bones. So Rudy and I do a lot of sponsorship stuff, getting sponsors. We do a lot of work there, and it's not easy. Sometimes it gets easier every year, but sometimes we have to start from scratch. Also, the business that I do have, my coaching business, I have to, and Rudy has a consulting business, we have to actually stop that about, I'd say, 4 months or 3 to 4 months before the events, because we can't do both. Just like I have to book out a voiceover. I can't audition for many, many months because I can't do that, coaching, and Sovas.
Yeah.
So in some ways, I've semi-retired, and I can only focus on teaching and building that back up after the end of the year. So because I have to let it go in order to focus. It gets really, really, really super, super, super intense the last 6 weeks. I mean, it's kind of unimaginable. And a lot of things, everything falls on me and Rudy, no matter
Yeah.
who is hired. So we can't do our way of making a living. We have to stop that. So it's actually not easy. And it's certainly not, oh, we make all this money. We don't. We
Yeah.
personally do not. And it is truly a labor of love for us. We believe in what we're doing. We believe in what we've created. And we believe that the voiceover community deserves this kind of attention. Regardless of, once you get the attention, it's what you do with it that will really create the result. It's not like anyone that gets an award that goes, oh, I got an award. Now the doors are opening. Now the phone calls. I mean, maybe the Oscars, but even when you hear about them, you have to promote it. And this is not a career where you're sitting back, not 1 minute, not
Nope.
1 minute. And if anyone expects that, then they're really, truly in the wrong business. You have to be self-motivated. You have to be kind of brilliant as a one man or one woman show. And however you are paying your dues, be happy that you're paying your dues, because eventually it's going to open doors for you because you'll know what you're doing. It won't be an accident. Accidents are great every once in a while, but not to rely on. Not to rely on. So everything that we're doing takes so much work, Tre. It's like everything is a science. Every little detail takes total work. I'm actually not, I'm meticulous to a certain degree. Rudy is very meticulous. That's just how his mind works.
Yeah.
I'm more creative, like spontaneous. I've had
Yeah.
to learn to be meticulous. And it's every year I'm like, you think it'd get easier for me, but it doesn't. There's also more work to do every year, but it's not that easy for me. But I do it.
Well,
I
I
do
want to
it.
say on behalf of the VO community that we appreciate everything that you and Rudy do for the community. You know, with that's voiceover and with Sovas. I got my trophy the other day. It's so nice. It's so
Oh
shiny.
wait, I saw you open it, right? Didn't Oh,
Yes,
you
I
took
did.
pictures. That
I
was the
took
best.
pictures. It
That
it
was
was
the
awesome.
best.
And I'll make sure this year I actually send all of my submissions in on time. Um,
Ah! That would be great.
that would
That
be
would be
great
great,
indeed.
Trey. That would
So
be great. And congratulations on everything.
thank you. Thank you so much. So in closing, as I do with all my guests, and this will be the very last question, um, how does Joan take time out for herself?
Oh my God. What a great question. So, one, I'm very active fitness wise. So, I'll say, if you can believe it, I do Zumba. It's Latin Zumba. So, I do Zumba. I do Kundalini yoga, which focuses
Nice.
on replenishing the breath, right? And it's not easy. I do Kundalini yoga. I also do hot yoga, i.e., Bikram yoga. It's now changed from Bikram to hot, the name. So I do hot yoga in a room that's 106-degree room. It's a sweat box.
Yes.
Okay. I also just started ballet bar.
Oh,
So it's just the
okay.
bar ballet, but let me tell you, I'm sore as hell right now. And I also jog. So when I'm not doing any of those things, so on Tuesdays, on Fridays, on Saturday, whatever it may be, I jog. And I jog between like 2 miles. So I'm not jogging for marathons or not, I'm just jogging for my own fitness. I
Sure.
have asthma. So
Really?
all these forms of exercise, they really build strength around everything except your lungs. But because your lungs are surrounded by strength, it strengthens your lungs. But if
Wow.
it didn't get strengthened by the other muscles in the body, my lungs wouldn't be necessarily strong. But yeah, and so I do. I also love flea markets. I've been
Really?
going to I have been going to flea markets since I've been to New York. Just a quick note, I have like antique earrings. I have 643 pairs of antique earrings. That does not include modern. They all tend to look like I took a chandelier and like grabbed it off the wall. Like that's the earring. So I have 643 pairs. I also have something like 80 shell boxes. These are shell boxes that were done from the Victorian era to the 60s. I don't go past that because then the shells are fake. But these are shells that sometimes they're falling off the boxes or whatever. But they were created by uh, in the Victorian era when the men went to war or when they went off to the army or whatever it may be, and they would
Mhm.
leave them on the beaches for their sweethearts. So a lot of them, a lot of the ones I have, they have like patterns, certain shell patterns, which means
Oh,
I
okay.
love you or
Oh,
wait
wow.
for me or I miss you. Yeah. And I have some extraordinary ones that are like the kind of shells like conch shells and abalone shells, and they're
Mhm.
like it's like huge thing with all kinds of little like lobster coming out of the rock or
Oh,
whatever.
okay. Man.
I have many collections, and so I love going to flea markets. And I'd say honestly, resting at this point is really critical. I feel like to my well-being. You know, being able to relax. So um, taking naps like but I can only do it once a week, so
Yeah.
I try to get caught up on all kinds of rest on Sundays. And also I love being with people and seeing people when I can. It's not always possible, especially as time goes on during the year. That I honestly I'm literally quarantined to my office, but I love traveling. That's another. I love traveling and I love being with people. So right now, those are the ways that I relax or unwind. And I do actually like therapy. I love focusing on methodologies, whether it's yoga, whether it's, something more along the lines of spiritual, that also really helps me. So
Nice.
those are the things I do.
Cool. All right. Tell the folks how they can find you and on the socials and keep up with all what's going on with you
Ah,
and with the organizations.
Okay, so we are on all the platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We're on there as Society of Voice Arts and Sciences. Um, and also, both Rudy and I have our own personal pages on all of the platforms. Usually, you can either find me under Joan Baker or Joan the Voice, just depending on the platform. And Rudy's basically Rudy Gaskins on all the platforms. We love I have to say, and I kid you not, we get every day, we get letters, emails from either all over the world from voiceover talent or in our inboxes. And sometimes I'm serious, it's like a little novel. And in these correspondences, it truly makes my day because it is actually fuel. It's we don't make money, but having people's love, heart, and experiences that we are creating, and they really experience the impact and really pour their hearts out to us, I'm telling you, that is money to us.
That's cool.
And we love them all.
And we love you. Well, we have made it to
Whoa!
the end.
Oh my
And
God, we sure have.
I know I have kept you. I think you now are the sole possessor of the longest episode of
Oh my
this
God,
very
Trey.
short podcast. But no, it has been a pleasure from top to bottom.
I have
Thank
loved
you.
spending time. Thank you for creating this platform for people to kind of come from their truth and speak from themselves as a human being. And that is definitely needed. And thank you for filling that void, Trey.
Absolutely. It has been my pleasure. And speaking of pleasurable people, the unstoppable Joan Baker, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time. We
Bye,
gone.
everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Take Time Out with Tre Mosley podcast, part of the Titan Media Network. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts. To see the video version of this, you can find us on YouTube on the Take Time Out with Tre Mosley YouTube page. Thanks for listening, or thanks for watching. Either way, we'll see you next time.